You remember this little guy? That little sailor mouth pitch shift GameStop mascot?
Score!
When they first introduced him, I was thrilled to see the company have a genuine mascot. I mean, there was that ogre dude, but who really remembers that guy, am I right?
Leveling up is overrated.
You're right, Buck. Leveling up is overrated. According to the character's lore, at least by what was represented at the 2009 GameStop conference, Buck started his adventures on the fictional 1981 Atari 2600 title called Bunny's Big Adventure. His popularity skyrocketed from there, being on lunchboxes, t-shirts, and even managed to get multiple celebrity interviews and endorsements. In this fictional universe, Buck was actually a more popular character than Mario himself, topping the charts for a good while. Further down the road, Buck the Bunny would have had intentions to star in a sequel called Bunny Down Under: An Australian Adventure, to be released for the Nintendo Entertainment System. However, with the introduction of 16-bit graphics, Buck's adventure in 8-bit began to descend, and people thought he didn't transition as well to 16-bit as he did in 8-bit. So I guess that means between the introduction of the Sega Genesis and TurboGrafx 16. So, as a result, Buck's 8-bit adventure fell, and also, Bunny fell with it. He soon fell into a life of poverty, drugs, and hepatitis.
If Pulp Fiction can resuscitate a no-talent like Travolta, then GameStop can do the same thing for me.
Up until this point, Buck had no actual name in the eyes of the community. Buck was simply called Bunny. And after his proper introduction at the 2009 GameStop conference, speaker Mike Hogan, senior executive at GameStop, announced their new plan to name the bunny with the help of those attending the conference. How that actually happened or turned out may be lost to time, but what we can take from it is the result, giving our nameless friend the title of Buck the Bunny once and for all. That would be the fictional side of the story, but what would be the true-to-life story behind Buck's creation? And how did he become such a big GameStop mascot? At some point in 2009, an individual by the name of Justin C. Harder designed this cute little dude for RealFX, an advertising film production company in Dallas, Texas. From there, the world's largest independently owned advertising agency, the Richards Group, picked up the idea, which was then pitched and approved for use in a GameStop advertisement called Bunny Money. The advert was displayed at GameStop locations, showcasing on in-store television sets in between trailers for games that were upcoming and/or trending at the time. The one-spot ad became so quickly noticeable and successful that GameStop decided to use the character even further. At this point, 3 more scripts were drawn for preceding adverts. One such animator on the project, known as Deva George, went on to animate the end credits scene for the first Deadpool movie. Small world. Buck was not just an icon for GameStop. He quickly made his way into genuine brand integrity for the company. Buck had a decent set of commercials, and had even begun appearing on promotional material and mail flyers for GameStop. According to Harder's own website, Buck was even at one point on Joey Logano's GameStop-sponsored NASCAR vehicle. It didn't stop there, as Buck also had some real-life video game adaptations of his own. First, he had a flash game on the GameStop website representing their first commercial, Bunny Money, which eventually led to the creation of Buck and the Coin of Destiny for iOS devices in 2011. With the amount of media presented for Buck, it was easy to see that he was becoming a big brand image for the company. It's not hard to see why. He parodied many different 2D platformers that would certainly appeal to the demographic of video gamers. Usually in the adverts, the bunny was frustrated with the difficult antics surrounding what was typically portrayed as the video game he was the star of. These would often lead directly into an announcement for a GameStop promotion. Leading the viewer into this clever sales trick with a charming animated sequence is brilliant, and parallels many other commercial mascots at the time, like for example Geico's Gecko or the Pillsbury Doughboy. But of course, Buck the Bunny was a lot more tongue-in-cheek. The very simplistic design of Buck gives him a charming demeanor and is easy on the eyes. To boot, his quirky facial expressions were easy to distinguish from each other, and it was always easy to understand what emotion he was conveying. Emotions that, in all honesty, would be very relatable to its core audience. These are some of the many reasons why Buck had become so popular. He was all over the brand from 2009 up until 2012. But why was his image retired so quickly? What inspired the fall of Buck the Bunny from the GameStop brand? Well, it helps to first and foremost realize that Buck hasn't actually been retired. He's still a pretty big brand image in other international locations of GameStop. To this day, you can still spot Buck on many of the international versions of the GameStop site, like in New Zealand, Switzerland, Finland, and more. In some cases, he's still used quite prominently with the branding. He is clearly visible on their modern GameStop Plus cards, and was even featured as an official mascot at the 2016 EB Expo in Westfield, Sydney. However, upon closer inspection, what once made Buck stand out seems to be quickly slipping. Australia's GameStop, known as EB Games, has been experimenting with new looks and styles for Buck as far back as 2014. This new look sports a more friendly friendly design, appealing particularly towards the demographic of children, whereas the original was created with a rather ambiguous demeanor. Most recently, Buck was present in a sweepstakes contest called the Great Buck Chase on August 19, 2017, which involved following their Australian Facebook page after locally picking up a limited edition poster and following the guidelines posted to their Facebook. While we know that Buck himself was not entirely eliminated, we're still brought to our lingering question. Why has Buck been kicked specifically from the North American marketing? Could it be another case of region-specific branding, like what Nintendo has done with Kirby for all these years? Well, it's hard to say without concrete evidence, and this is where things get a little tricky and even more obscure. While I did communicate with Justin C. Harder, he was about as out of the water as everyone else has been. His assumption to it being removed from the North American market was, as he puts it, an ad agency thing. He wasn't even aware of the alterations to the design for the last couple of years, so unfortunately without any solid leads from this, it pretty much brings us right back to where we started. What happened to Buck the Bunny, at least what happened to him in the North American market? Getting deeper from this point is not so easy to do. The only people left to reach out to are first-party members of GameStop themselves, and to put it simply, brand identity secrets such as this are more often than not completely ignored by higher-ups. So what I decided to do from here is to contact both the Richards Group and GameStop management with a small glimmer of hope to finally get this question answered. Well, unfortunately, it's been more than a week since I contacted them, and they haven't gotten back to me. At a bit of a turmoil, I turned to the last place I could think of that I quite honestly have never used before, and that was Reddit. The GameStop Reddit isn't massive, but it has enough activity for my questions to gain some attention. The first response was by a user of the name of Sloan the Sloth. They stated that Buck was slowly getting phased out here, and that nobody seems to have ever genuinely expressed the reason. GameStop allegedly has an employee training video called Level Up, which was created within the last few years. One of the lessons there states that Buck the Bunny was dead, and in replacement was Spiny Norman. However, Sloan states that Spiny Norman doesn't actually exist in the brand image, never being used in marketing. Spiny Norman is actually just a reference to a Monty Python sketch called The Piranha Brothers, afraid of a fictional character called Spiny Norman, who was a gigantic imaginary hedgehog. It isn't hard to put two and two together, and speculate this means GameStop is resisting an actual mascot of any kind, at least for the time being. An interesting and potentially case-closing comment was eventually written by user MadmanInABox1963. They state that one of their older managers told them some adverts involving Buck became too risque as they attempted appealing to an older audience. This resulted in some backlash from some of the sensitive audience members that eventually turned to GameStop abandoning Buck for good in the North American markets. Other locations were not so against Buck. Then again, that brings with it the question, were these advertisements localized to other regions, or did they stay exclusive to North America? If they were exclusive here, it would make sense for other regions to still use Buck, as their image of the character would be no more than the illustration itself, something it's still reserved for there even today. There is some truth in people not liking Buck as a character here in North America. Multiple forum threads exist, particularly on website boards like GameSpot and IGN. These had users publicly display their distaste for Buck, finding him annoying, and just another way to lead in customers to a purchase. However, this brings us to a point in time where the consistency of message responses there was relatively slim. All the same, I can only give my utmost respect for the GameStop community for being so insightful. While it is unfortunate that we don't have any clear-cut evidence to Buck's North American removal, I think the most plausible consequence to his demise was his controversial approach. Instead of holding a bit of a legacy status, the possibility of Buck returning does not seem to be very far-fetched, considering his still rather large impact on GameStop's international locations. He, however, will not be the same character that we grew to love more than half a decade ago. The thriving character, full of life and attitude, now serves as a simple cardboard cutout for the company, and perhaps that's all the Buck we're gonna see from here on out.